Hello everybody, Hassan here, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Basically wanted to talk about this theory of investing related to investing, and I think how it is the biggest mistake most of us, if not all of us, make whenever we're trying to learn a new subject, a new topic. So I kind of wanted to talk about this theory here, show the chart, go my own experiences, and also talk about other people's experiences, and kind of formulate this video where hopefully you can learn a thing or two and maybe humble yourself long term. So before I do that, I do want to mention it is Wednesday here in Toronto. It's a great weather. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. I've been researching a lot, lots of studying. It's really interesting when you have time on your hand, a little bit of time on your hand, you can kind of dive deep into a particular topic or a couple of topics. In fact, last night I was reviewing a particular history on World War II, a particular history on a specific nation. So kind of using this time that I have to really dive deep before I get back to my day job next week. So hopefully wherever you are, hopefully whatever you're doing here in mid-July, it's already past mid-July, 16 July. Can you believe it? It's 16 July, guys. It's like June 15 to 16 July went so fast in the last 30 days. It feels like we were last week, it was like June 1st. Nonetheless, let's jump right into it, guys. So this chart here, and by the way, I did talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect a couple of years ago. In fact, I think 2 years ago I made a video on it, but I wanted to really get back to this lesson here, this theory, because one, it applies to current status, the current status quo of the market, everything that's happening with AI, everything that's happening with machine learning, everything that's happening with CRISPR, with Bitcoin, with Tesla. And I think it's a good opportunity to revisit this theory and kind of talk about our own experiences, right? So on the x-axis here, you have the knowledge, and on the y-axis, you have your confidence level, right? And you can tell that whenever you try to learn something new, you feel very confident because you're grabbing that information very quickly. You're garnishing some sort of knowledge very quickly at a smaller time span. And in fact, what happens is you go from zero, not knowing anything at all about that particular topic, to maybe 1% or 2% of that topic very quickly. And what happens is that creates an illusion, because what happens is you go through maybe a couple of days, couple of weeks maybe, and you're feeling very confident that now you've learned the topic, the subject, the particular subject, because you watch videos, you listen to podcasts, you maybe read some books, or you had conversations with people. And then what happens is, as time goes by and you stick with that topic, and hopefully you stick with that topic, which I'll come back to that statement in just a second, why I'm saying hopefully you stick with that topic, is that as time goes by, you kind of realize that you didn't really know that much. And the things that you thought were very certain become uncertain. And as you go through time, so months go by, years go by, your confidence level actually diminishes from what you peaked at originally. And it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing, because you kind of realize there's a confidence gap. And that's what they're showing here between an early learner, a beginner, an apprentice in a particular topic, and someone who's kind of known in the industry to be an expert. And there's this confidence gap that's created between an expert and someone who's learning. And by the way, not like I said at the beginning, not all of us jump into that peak early on, but that peak does happen at some point in our learning curve. It may not come early on, it may come a little bit later, but it does happen. The key here is that there's a confidence gap that eventually gets created. And that confidence gap is what you want to analyze whenever you're trying to learn a new topic. Because for what you thought was enough to know everything about the topic is actually the incorrect way of looking at it, because what happens is over time you go through weeks, months, years, and you're like, well, I didn't even know that much about it. I actually don't know much about it. And then the things I thought were obvious are not that obvious anymore. And it's not about creating uncertainty and now you're left with an actionless state. It's more about creating a reality based on that confidence gap that you can operate in without being delusional, right? And without obviously being actionless. So I think that's what I wanted to cover in this video, and obviously relate with some investment experiences. And I can draw a simple example with CRISPR, right? A lot of us that got in this space, and I think I speak for a lot of people in this space, and myself including, I got in this space, I was like, yeah, CRISPR is going to change the world. CRISPR is going to change all the gene editing technologies. That's the technology. That's the tool. Every company is going to look into it. At some point, I was kind of spewing out that Tesla was going to look into CRISPR because they were doing their own mRNA technology during the pandemic. And I thought all the big pharma companies are going to look into CRISPR. And I would say 2021 was the peak. And I think what happened is we all got humbled, obviously, not just by the stock price, but by how slow the progress is, right? And then we kind of realized, okay, well, hold on here. There's a lot happening here. CRISPR, yes, it is having an impact. Yes, CRISPR is here to stay. Yes, CRISPR is a technology that can revolutionize the way we view diseases, human health long term. But there is a confidence gap that was created because we kind of got humbled, of course, by the stock market. That's the first indicator. But I think there's other things too involved, right? You kind of see how the FDA took a long time to approve Casgevy, which had plenty of data. And then you kind of see other companies working on other technologies and they're being valued differently. And then you see that CRISPR is moving a lot slower than we thought. And then you see Verve being sold out at a very large premium, don't get me wrong. But look, if Verve was so confident about their technology, if Verve knew CRISPR was going to revolutionize the whole thing, then they would not have sold for $1 billion, because they could have been worth $10 billion in a couple of years. Why would you sell yourself short? It's because obviously it's not the way we perceived it early on. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that CRISPR is not going to be valued to what we believe in this channel, 10x, 20x valuation currently. Again, not financial advice, but that is still the thesis. That is still my thesis. That is still the conviction I have. But the point of talking about the Dunning-Kruger effect is that you kind of see how your confidence level gets affected as time goes through, and you kind of you acquire more and more knowledge, and you're like, well, hold on here. It is a lot more complex than I thought here, right? I mean, the same thing goes with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, you start learning about it, you invest in Bitcoin, the price goes up, you think you know everything, and then the price goes down, and then you see things move really slow in the market, and then you kind of start humbling yourself, and you kind of learn the mechanism, you learn the processes, and the hype goes away. I mean, I went through that in 2017, 2018, when I remember 2018 when Bitcoin was down 80%. I mean, that was really tough, guys. That was so tough because it really did come to challenge my beliefs that I had just a year prior. I thought Bitcoin in 2017 was going to just like be adopted by nations, and it was going to be the standard for all companies as weeks go by and people were piling up. But I was wrong. The process is much slower. Now, I'm not saying my conviction was not correct. It was just the time frame was incorrect. And look, from 2017 all the way to 2025, we still don't have a nation that is stacking up Bitcoin publicly at a mass scale. We do believe that there are some companies, and some, obviously not just companies, but some nations that are stacking up secretly. But that's not what we mean by printing out your fiat currency to buy a bunch of Bitcoin, right? But again, I didn't want to make this about Bitcoin and so on. And I could start talking about AI, right? AI is a great example here. The 2022, 2023 ChatGPT moment was the peak. Everybody was like, okay, well, now for the next foreseeable future, every company is going to lay off a bunch of employees, and we're going to make so much money, and they're going to cut 30, 40, 50, 60% of their staff, and companies and organizations will make a lot more money because of AI. It's going to help reduce delays, reduce costs. The FDA is going to adopt AI. Biotech's going to adopt AI. We're going to have a bunch of healthcare medicine, bunch of biotech stuff out there, new technologies. And that was in 2022, late 2022, early 2023. And we're basically past almost 3 years now, and we still don't have a significant revenue generator for any of these companies due to AI, other than pure AI companies like XAI, ChatGPT, which obviously are selling their product. I mean, do you see any travel company making a bunch of money from AI? No, and it's been 3 years almost. And the point here is not to say that it's not going to do that. It's more to say about the Dunning-Kruger effect, that we're all victims of that, right? Society is a victim of that. I would argue legacy media, I would argue people on Reddit, on X, on YouTube are all victim of that. Is that we hit our peak really early on, and we kind of we're in this delusionist state of mind where we believe that we know everything, and this is how the future is going to be, this is how it's going to work like. And then what happens is, as time goes by, we humble ourselves, right? And I think that's kind of what this graph is showing. And of course there's different ways to interpret this as well. I'm more focused on the timeline. I feel like timeline, there's a nice saying that says that we overestimate the short term and we underestimate the long term. And the reason why we do that is humans by default are risk adverse, right? We are risk adverse. I mean, you may see some people think bunch of effects, but bunch of risks, sorry. But the truth is, by default, we're risk adverse, and we should be risk adverse because that's how we survive as human beings like thousands of years ago, right? If you had apex predators out there, you couldn't just take full-on risk forever and then ensure your survival of yourself, your family, your community, your tribe, right? You had to be risk adverse. And as years went and centuries and millenniums went by, we always kept that natural instinct, and it's very hard for us to kind of get out of that state of mind, right? And I think that's kind of what this graph actually shows, right? Because you learn about a topic, and it's your state of mind is to be risk adverse, which is to take less risk. And if you learn about a topic, you think you know everything because it is the less risky way. But it's funny because being risk adverse is actually ironically taking more risk, right? By knowing that by thinking that you know everything, you're actually taking more risk because you don't actually know everything. And it's been proven time and time and again. And just think about the last time you learned a sport. Just think about the last time you learned about a company, about investing, about a particular topic, a technology. Just think about how many times you were learning about it and you're like, yeah, I know everything. You start talking to other people. We all know someone who does that, where they start talking about you about a particular topic, and they make it seem like they've studied so much and they know everything. But deep in back of your mind, you're like, well, man, you've only been doing this for like 6 months, 12 months, a year or 2 years. I've been doing this for 8, 9, 10 years, and even I'm not that confident. Right? And that's the perfect graph for it. Now, again, it's not about reaching the peak early on. It's more about being aware that this peak happens and there's a confidence gap that you have to be analyzing, and you have to be humble enough to say, look, I don't actually know everything about this topic. I have to be open-minded. I have to understand when someone makes a statement like that, I want to understand why is this statement being made and what's the counter argument. I made a comment a couple of videos ago, and I posted that in the past as well. I actually listen to people that I actually disagree with a lot, like on podcasts, on YouTube, on videos format. I do follow some people that I actually disagree with a lot. Now, I'm not saying that's all I do. Now, obviously, I'm learning about things that I want to learn and so on. But I actually, for example, Scott Galloway on YouTube, he's a big anti-Tesla person, right? And when I mean anti, I mean he's anti-Elon, he's anti-Tesla as a company. He thinks the company is way overvalued, and he thinks that the technology is way overestimated, and it's, again, just unfairly valued in the market. People are going to get burned and so on. And he's been saying that for many years. It's nothing new. Yet I still listen to his opinion about those topics a lot. It's not like I shrug off them. It's not like I ignore them or I fast forward, because he does say some cool and good stuff other than just certain things, like about Bitcoin, about Tesla, about particular political beliefs maybe. The key here is that either two things happen when I listen to those types of people that I disagree with. Either I change my mind, which I have done in the past. I have changed my mind about certain topics that I held a strong belief. It's hard, don't get me wrong. I would argue it's the hardest thing, one of the hardest things ever, to change your mind about a particular topic. Or two, I actually double down on my thesis and I'm more confident. And there's only these two things that can happen, right? There's no third option. Either you get humbled and you change your mind and you slowly change your minds. It's a slow process and you get more knowledge. Again, it's maybe part of that Dunning-Kruger effect, that you thought you knew a lot, but then there's the other side you didn't hear out or you didn't review. Or I actually double down on my thesis. For example, on the Tesla topic, I've heard him mention a lot about Tesla. I've seen everything that he had to say about Tesla. I actually understand his arguments like literally by the letter. And that only doubled down on my thesis on Tesla, because I know what he's saying. It's not that it's coming out of the wrong place. It's just not formulated properly based on the experience and knowledge that he has, right? He's comparing Tesla with legacy autos. He's comparing Tesla with the Ford, the GMs, the Stellantis, and the Honda. But what he doesn't fully understand is Tesla is not a car company. Tesla is an AI, robotics, energy company. And based on that difference, again, I keep doubling down on my thesis on how I know I'm right. And again, he's not the only person I listen to that I disagree with. But this is just an example, right? You could make the same argument on CRISPR, right? Think about, some people that are talking down on CRISPR, and you kind of want to understand their argument. Okay, you believe CRISPR is down. It's not going to be here to stay because the delivery mechanism is not there, or because it takes too long to get patients enrolled and dosed and potentially cured, or maybe because there's other technologies that can do a better job. Well, I think it's worth understanding those arguments, listening to them, and then you either go two ways. Either you actually change your mind, or you double down on your thesis. Either these two things can only happen when you listen to people you disagree with. And I would highly advise people to do that, because I think the worst thing we can do is stay in these echo chambers where we keep listening to people we agree with, we keep watching people we agree with, and what happens is you become a victim of your own curiosity, because you're no longer curious about a particular subject or matter. In fact, I would argue you become lazy by re-listening to the same people, spewing out the same arguments that you already believe in, and it's just increasing. Is it really increasing your confidence or your knowledge about a particular topic that you already know? That's why I try to juggle with and think on a daily basis, and hopefully you are as well. And I know I speak for a lot of people watching our videos that they do this. People do this. Like, people actually, I'm not the only one doing this, right? I mean, I've learned this from other people where they were having conversations with people they disagree with, debating. I try to talk with people with different social wealth classes, because that's when I understand. I think I'd like to say that I can understand better the fabrics of society, right? As you try to talk to people from different buckets in society, right? As opposed to be talking to someone who's just in your wealth class. Like, for example, if you're coming from a impoverished background and you're only talking to people with lower household incomes, and you're only focused on that, and you're only staying with those people, hanging out with those people, then it's more likely that your conversations and your beliefs, your culture, your goals, your aspirations are always going to revolve around that type of environment, right? And the same could be made. And I'm not just talking about wealth, by the way. I'm talking about health. I'm talking about social. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about, the way you view society, the community, your tribe, the people around you. Like, it's not just about the money, guys. Like, there's a lot more involved here. And hopefully, that's a takeaway today. And again, I kind of went on a couple of tangents here. It kind of started with the Dunning-Kruger effect and started talking about some of my own experiences with the way I operate on a daily basis. But hopefully it can help some of you guys. I mean, again, this is no financial advice, guys. I'm not saying CRISPR is, gonna 100x next week. That's not my point here. I'm not saying Bitcoin is gonna 100x or Tesla is for sure the de facto winner and there's absolutely nothing nobody can do about it. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that there's a confidence gap that can be analyzed, and you can do that today on your own. And I hope all of you viewers do that today on your own, where you learn on your own and you kind of self-reflect yourself. And I think self-reflection is, in my opinion, the most underrated skill about anything, like anything you do in life. Forget about investing, just anything, right? So, guys, I'm gonna end this video like this. Went on a couple of subjects here, but hopefully you found some value here. If you did, leave me a comment, guys. Let me know. What do you guys think? Have you been a victim of the DKE effect, as some people call it, the Dunning-Kruger effect? Let me know. Like this video, guys. Please do like this video. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much.